All right, welcome to another episode of Founders Club. Today, I'm very excited to be speaking with Jack Bosch. He is the founder of Land Profit Generator and the author of Forever Cash. We're going to be having an in-depth conversation about how you can make money with land and how it's one of the most underrated niches in real estate and can be highly profitable for those who understand it. If you have any questions, put them in the box down below. Make sure you hit that like button and check out all the links in the description. And as always, if you like money and you like real estate, hit that subscribe button because this is the show for you. We'll see you on the inside. Welcome to Founders Club, the show for real estate entrepreneurs. All right, Jack, welcome to Founders Club.
Well, thank you very much for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Excited to have you as well. And, you're one of the top land investors in the space. You've built a highly profitable land investing business over the years. And one thing that I saw that was really cool is you've even got your kids doing land deals now. And I think that maybe that's actually a good space to start because, that's really good motivation to show that really anybody can do this business. Anybody can buy a piece of land and make a nice profit from really anywhere in the country. So that to me is what's really exciting about land. And I'd love to hear your thoughts on kind of maybe we start with why land and then kind of the story about how your daughter did her first land deal.
Absolutely. I'm happy to share how she made over, if it's all, at the end of the day, it'll be more than $40,000 on her first land deal at age 16. So
Amazing.
why land? Well, I always like to joke that land is, that there's three T's that we have to deal with in every other real estate except for land, or in almost every other real estate. There's a couple of exceptions, and that is, what is the three T's? It's tenants, toilets, and termites. Or it's really, you can make it five T's: tenants, toilets, termites, trash, and there's another one I forgot right now. But basically, bottom line is, land takes away all the complexities that come with traditional real estate. You don't have to get an inspector out to the land to analyze it. You don't have to don't have to meet with contractors. There's no mold. There's no roof issues. There's no foundation issues, et cetera, et cetera. And what we do essentially is, basically what we do is, we figured out about 22 years ago, when we were starting to get into, and I say we, my wife and I, we're married 23 years. We realized very quickly that in the job world, we had to be separated all day long, and we didn't want to do that. So we dabbled into stuff. We found real estate, and in real estate, we failed a bunch of times in the more complicated ways of fix and flip and wholesaling and things like that. And once we found land, things just take it off, because the way we deal with land is the way that the wholesaler deals with houses, just in the difference. So we get pieces of land for 30, 40 cents on the dollar under contract, and we turn around and wholesale them for 70 cents on the dollar, double, triple our money, or I don't even put money in there because we do it such that the buyer's money is being used for everything. But bottom line is, when you do it like that, it's not land development, it's not land entitlement, even though you can do that. Now we are going into those areas, but a very simple land strategy is that you find an owner you don't want anymore, who doesn't want the property anymore. You get under contract for pennies on the dollar, and you put it back on the market and sell it for more. And when you do that, you don't have to deal with tenants, toilets, and termites. You don't have to deal with any of the complexities that we typically deal with when we're working with houses. And that was exciting to us. That was actually something I could also wrap my brain around, because I started with zero knowledge. I'm originally from Germany. I didn't even know the language of real estate. I knew nothing about it. But a piece of land, the first piece of land was a $10,000 piece of land that we got for $400, and we sold for $4,000 to the neighbor. And I'm like, I can do that again. I don't have to. All I have to figure out is how to value the land, and that's actually pretty simple. All right, so that's my land, because it's just takes all the moving pieces away and gives you an asset class that is very desirable, that you can get cheaper, sell for good price, make the same money, but not have to deal with all these complexities.
I love that, and I think that's a really terrific model. And what I can already hear people thinking is, how do you get, you know, deals for 30 cents on the dollar? How do you get a $10,000 piece of land for 400 bucks? Right? That's immediately I know what people are thinking.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we also gotten we pay sometimes we make offers of $60,000 for $100,000 lot, and then we sell it for 75,000 again, and we make $15,000 in the deal after transaction, after closing costs, perhaps like 14 or $13,000. That's still a good payday. I'm okay with a quick 13 grand here and there,
Yeah.
and sometimes we get deals for $80,000 and we sell them for 150, and they're worth 300, they're worth 200, and we make $70,000 on the deal. So it all spreads, it all varies. So why can you get these properties so cheap? Well, if you think about it, in the land side of things, there's when somebody owns land and they don't do anything with it, it becomes an albatross at some point of time at their feet. So I'm not disputing. I'm not saying land is great to hold on to. Well, if you hold on to it, it costs you property taxes. It costs you, depending on where it's located, some upkeep. I mean, if it's recreational land, if it's 20 acres out in the nature, you don't have to do much to keep it up. But if it's an infill lot between a bunch of houses and it rains and the weeds grow, gotta cut down the weed. If there's perhaps a little fence around it, you got to make sure it's maintained. If somebody dumps their old mattress on there, you got to have it removed, right? If it's in the path of growth, if it's the outside of cities, that's the second area we like to do deals in. It's the same kind of thing. If it's on a road and it gets all overgrown, you have to sometimes come out and just make it, keep it pretty, and then et cetera, et cetera. So it costs property taxes. It costs a little bit of maintenance, and it doesn't bring cash flow. On the contrary, it sucks out cash. And so what happens in many cases is owners that have owned these properties for decades, they bought it to perhaps down the road build a house on there or build a retirement home on there. Or if it's a larger piece of acres, like a couple of hours outside of a big city, it's a third kind of property we focus on. Perhaps they went out there for a few years with a camper, with the RV, but now in their 60s, they don't want to do this anymore, right? Instead, they want to go stay with the grandkids. They want to go travel other places in the world. So they're sitting on this piece of land, either an infill lot in the city that they want to build a retirement home on there, but life plans have changed. Babies are born, grandchildren are born. Perhaps one spouse passed away and they no longer don't want to move anymore. Or both owners have passed away and now the heirs have it. And the kids, do they want land or do they want money? Right? Heirs want money, right? So there's many reasons why. Yeah. There's many reasons why, particularly in the land space, just people that just hold on to land after 5, 10, 15, 20 years, at some point of time, they're just like, you know what? I don't even care if I get much for the land. I want to just be able to stop paying property taxes. I just want to get rid of that thing. And if somebody offers me something that I can do something with, I'll accept it. So a $30,000 property, you offer them 10 grand, and they're like, 10 grand is something I can do something with. Yeah, I can go and take a nice vacation for it. I can go replace my car for it or something like that, and they'll accept your offer because they want to stop the bleeding and they want to release some cash. So compare that to houses. In the house side of things, people know there's a value in the house. People are not just going to, usually don't just give you a house for half price. It almost never happens unless the house is like in horrible conditions, but then they still don't give it to you at half price. They give you at whatever its value because it just needs a lot of repairs. And so a lot of people in the house world don't give you those discounts because they know that if it's in any kind of decent condition, they can put a tenant in there. They're going to go sell it to somebody who's going to fix it up and sell it. And so my house flipper friends have to become really, really good at negotiating. Me as a land flipper and my land flipper friends or students that we have taught this, we now teach this to, they actually don't have to be as good at negotiating because it's a different asset class that has a lower that one brings cash in, like when you have it as a tenant, when we had a tenant in it, the other one costs you money by just holding on to it. So they're willing to let this one go, the land go, at much steeper discounts than the houses.
Yeah, I think that makes total sense. And I've talked to a few other, really successful land flippers who you probably know, Dan Haberkost and Pete Reese. And the way they explained it to me was just there's a lot less emotional attachment,
Yeah.
right? If it's grandpa's old house that they inherited, maybe they have memories of going there from when they were a kid. But if it's, a piece of dirt in a different state and they inherit it, they, like you said, would much rather just have some cash, get it off their books, not have to pay the taxes on it, not have to do any maintenance, things like that. So there's definitely a lot of opportunity to get a deal there.
Yeah, no, 100% agree. Yeah, I still am mad at my family for selling my grandfather's house in Germany because I just spent so many beautiful, wonderful summers with my grandpa and my grandma there that now when I drive by, it kind of like burns and splits my soul that I was like, man, I could have I could have bought that thing. And unfortunately, he passed away before we found our land method, so we didn't have the money back then yet. But if he would just passed a few years later, I would have found this a few years earlier. I would have just bought this thing and then rented it, and always be able to just like walk in there and continue the memories. But a piece of land, it's just a piece of dirt that nobody
Right.
wants and that nobody has an interest in. So they often give it away for very, very low money.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I can relate to that story as well. My grandma's house was also in Germany in a little town called Schonungen, and same thing. I wish we were able to keep that because a lot of good memories going there as a kid. Um,
Yeah.
but I definitely want to talk about, finding deals and how to get good deals and whatnot. But maybe before we jump into that, let's talk about your daughter and how at 16 years old she was able to make nearly $40,000 on her first land deal. Hey there, I just have a quick favor to ask. If you're getting value from Founders Club and you're watching on YouTube, just give us a like, hit that subscribe button. If you're listening on iTunes, leave us a 5-star review. These things are free to do and it really helps the channel. And it also helps us be able to bring better guests for you in the future. Now back to the episode.
Yeah, so our daughter has been around us obviously since she's born, and she very quickly realized that we're living a different life than most of her friends' families. So she goes to a private school, one of the top three schools in Arizona, and most of her friends' parents are like attorneys, doctors, like well known, like top performing kind of entrepreneurs and things like that, and also business owners. And what she sees them do is like their parents are never around. I mean, they never see their dad. They never see things. And in our family, second grade, I was known as the class dad. I mean, I have pictures of me dressed up as Olaf from what's the thing from Frozen, and we have a
Nice.
bunch. There's a bunch of like 8 kids around me, just like two other Olafs and things like that. And they were just had a kick. They got a kick out of me bouncing around there as like a freaking snowman. And
Great.
and things like that. And I'm always the dad. I was always the dad that went to every kind of like what's it called, the parents association meeting, to I don't know, met our daughter for lunch and things like that. And then in summer we take like 6-week trips to Europe and just travel around usually every break. We just take time off and we travel and we have a great life. And and so we consciously, strategically, basically asked her as she grew up, is like, Sophia, do you see any difference between how we live our life and how most of your friends live their life? She's like, yeah, their dads are never around. Their family's constantly working. They live in beautiful homes. Like they live in Paradise Valley. Most of her friends live in an area called Paradise Valley, which is like the Beverly Hills of Phoenix. And so you go into these mansions. These are like some of the people who have like $10 million mansions, but they're never around. They're just work, 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 work.
Work all the time. Yeah.
And so soon enough, she's like, Dad, Mom, I don't want to become an employee. I want to work for myself. And it's like, yes, like
Yeah.
victory. That's what we wanted to accomplish in the first place. And so
Definitely.
she's like, I want to do what you guys do. Can you teach me? And I was like, girl, I would love to teach you, but I don't think it's the greatest idea if the dad or your mom teaches you, because you know that works, right? Everyone, the kids follow everyone else's kind of instructions except for their parents. So
Yeah.
what we did, since we are teaching this, we have a coaching company that teaches that. We have an investment company, land investment company, and a coaching company. We basically simply plugged her into our educational program. We basically gave her, hooked her up with a coach, and she went to the exact same program that our coaching students do, with the exact same struggles. Like, she's in high school. She goes to school at 8 a.m., comes back at 3 p.m. She has piano. She does rock climbing. Then she volunteered to raise money for cancer research. She's a very responsible girl, but at the same time, she has friends. She has homework. I mean, you know, these kids, if they're really dedicated, they they leave the house at 7:40 in the morning, and they're done with their work at 8 p.m. or 9 p.m. And
Mhm.
so she had the exact same challenges that everyone else out there that has a normal job has. You work from 8, you have to come back at 5 or 6, make dinner for the family, or bring the dog out, meet with friends, want to have a social life. It's hard to find time to actually make these things work. So she
Mhm.
faced the same thing, and with that, the struggle took her a little bit to get up on her feet, but then she did. And then amongst other deals that she found one deal in the outskirts of town, of a big growing town, that is a 5-acre parcel. And she got the deal under contract for $6,000. And then it's in the path of growth. So basically, there's the city grows in this direction. And right up here was the property, and was on a dirt road, but in an up and coming kind of growing area that probably in the next 15 years is going to explode in growth.
Mm.
And so she got under contract. Typical case, the seller didn't want it. The seller was out of state. The seller had it for 30, 40 years. The kids didn't want it. So they gave it to her for $6,000. She put it under contract. Then she found the best realtor in the area. And the best realtor was a lady. She's like, you know what, based on that, she told the realtor her estimate of value was like $30,000. So she's like, why don't we put it on the market for like 23 so we can sell it? And the realtor is like, no, I disagree. I think the market in this area is heating up a little bit. I think we can get probably like 34, 35 for it. So why don't we start it at that, and we can always drop the market. Dropped the value. So she put it out there for 35 and for 32, and she got within 3 days a bidding war on it, and ended up selling it for $40,000. And she did it with, actually, she had two offers. One offer was 36 cash, all cash, and the other one was a $40,000 offer with a $15,000 down payment and monthly payments of $500 for the next, I think 10 years or so. So
Oh, beautiful.
in other words, if she looks at that, we then talked about it, and she chose to take the $40,000 offer, because if she pays 6 to the seller and she received 15, and the realtor commission was 10% in this case, so the realtor got $4,000. So she sent 6 to the seller, 4 to the realtor, 2 to the title company. She still had $3,000 in her pocket, cash profit, and her $6,000 basically back that she got from that. So basically, she had $9,000. She turned her $6,000 into $9,000, and now she's receiving $500 a month, which is $6,000 a year for the next, I think, 7 to 10 years. Don't hold me. Don't keep it. I don't have the exact numbers in front of me. But bottom line is, I think it might be a shorter term, but she's going to get an extra $8,000 or $9,000 in interest on top of it. So the total amount that she's going to collect is something going to be like $48,000. So minus the 6 and the
Amazing.
closing costs, she'll make $40,000 net on that deal.
Yeah,
Pretty good.
that's fantastic. So first of all, round of applause on that. That's really impressive. And like you said, you know, she's got life in the way, just like everybody else does. She's in school, she's got her extracurriculars, and she still was able to do that. And I think the real important takeaway there, and I think what a lot of people miss about land, is they think, oh, you can't cash flow with land. Why would I want to invest with it? But there's lots of different ways where you actually can cash flow with land. And I definitely want to go into some of those strategies here in a minute.
Sure.
But maybe we can start with just how we go about finding land deals. Like, what would your
Right.
advice be? Someone looking to do this, how do we find a deal?
So the simplest way to find a deal is by selecting an area in the United States that you want to do this in. Again, we focus on three kind of areas. First thing is infill lots. Infill lots require a lot more marketing, to say that straight up. So if you want to do infill lots, I mean, there you are competing with builders, with developers, with fix and flippers that actually can't get enough houses, so they're getting lots and building a ground up from on those lots. But obviously, when you do that follow-up systems and you get deals, you can very quickly sell them in a matter of a day or a couple of emails. You sell them to a builder. So the exit is lightning fast on those. The entry is just a little bit more effort involved. Second kind of property we focus on is basically 1 to 10 acre parcels in the outskirts of town. So anywhere after the last development ends, basically starting there 10, 20, 30, 50 miles outside of a bigger city. And we sell those to actually usually to people that want to work from home, and that and like the remote workers, of which we have now close to 50 million in the United States now. And those people, a lot of them make good income, but not everyone wants to live in the city on a tiny house and in a busy neighborhood. Some of them just want to have 5 acres and so on. And the third kind of property is those 10 acre plus recreational land, mini ranches, I call them, that in like a couple of hours away from town. So what you do is you pick an area in the United States that is somewhat growing. You don't want to have a shrinking area, because in a shrinking area, nobody's interested in land. But in a growing area or an attractive area, in a fun area that there's stuff to do, because a lot of your buyers outside of the infill lots are people that do enjoy the outdoors. And then what you do is you get a list from a data source. There's many data sources out there you can choose from, like CoreLogic, DataTree. We have a software that's tied into one of the premier data services out there, so you can literally at your fingertips download records into a system, and then it's connected to a mailing house. And then we love sending out direct mail, because again, direct mail actually works very well in areas that are not oversaturated with competition. And houses are very much oversaturated in competition, as everyone that has ever been in the housing space know. Like there's a million realtors fighting for every listing. There's a million wholesalers fighting for every wholesale deal. There's a million fix and flippers fighting for every really good wholesale or every very good fix and flip property. And in land, that's just simply not the case. Because most people do have exactly the stereotype that you just mentioned in mind. There's like, oh, I can't cash flow with land, so why would I invest in land? Land, it just sits there. It takes property taxes on my pocket. I don't want it, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So most people simply ignore land. They also think land is expensive, and they also think land is risky. And it's actually true if you go and buy that downtown 2-acre lot next to the ballpark, and you want to develop that into a high rise. That can be extremely risky. Like there's a guy in Phoenix or in Tempe that built a high rise, and just in 2008 he finished it, and it just came down in shambles. Not physically, that the tower still stands, but the financial thing, he lost his life savings. One guy committed suicide because he couldn't get the lending, and he lost $100 million of investors' money. And it's like horror stories, right? But that's not the land we're dealing with here. That's the kind of land that gives land that stereotype in people's head. What we're talking about is the 1/4 acre infill lot worth $100,000 that's been somebody owning for 30 years, and you pay him 80 grand and you sell it to the builder for 100 grand, make a quick 20 grand. Talking about the 2-acre parcel half an hour outside of town that somebody that wants to buy and put a mobile home on there, or the 2-acre parcel half an hour outside of town that somebody wants to buy, build a house on, and work from home. And then when they do need to go into town, they're only 20 minutes or half an hour away from town, and they can do that. And a lot of people, especially in the virtual world, love that. A lot of people want to have a simpler life, and so on. So and then the mini ranches are very attractive too. So you get a list of them, and then you contact them. Direct mail works because, again, most people are not in the land space. So the amount of letters that a landowner gets is very, very low. Right. You get some perhaps, but usually very, very low. Like I have 25 rental houses and almost 1,000 apartment units. I'm getting on the rental houses, I'm probably getting 3 text messages a day asking me if I want to sell my rental house. I'm getting probably 3 cold calls a day asking me if I'm ready to sell one of these rental houses, and I'm not. I want to own them for the next 50 years. But that's what happens. And at the same time, I currently own 141 pieces of land, and I'm getting 1 or 2 letters a month for those. So it just shows you a little bit of the thing. So we do direct mail that you can also cold call, you can text people, you can do all these advanced strategies. And then when they call you and say like, yeah, I'm interested in selling, you do a little research on the deal, you make them an offer, and you sell the property. Interestingly, though, I think your audience has a lot of realtors. We do not go on the MLS and go make direct offers to owners. That would be circumventing the agent, right? We don't do that. We go to databases of direct mail lists, like basically CoreLogic and things like that. We say, give me all the landowners that own the land in this areas and have owned it for X years and that have inherited it, and based on different kind of ownership types. And then it's like, okay, those guys, we now send a letter. In there, sometimes there is a property that's currently listed. And if that's the case, we always ask the seller to give us the listing information. And then we go obviously directly to the realtor, because I have a real estate license in the state of Arizona, and I want to make sure that I do everything 100% above board and don't go around any kind of realtor ever. Just wanted to mention that.
No, yeah, that's great. And then, so when you're kind of picking your market, do you have any tips there for maybe like what makes a good market versus what makes a no-go market?
Yeah, so the no-go, there's really only 2 no-go markets. The one no-go market is one where there's like where nobody wants to go. Because what you find is you pull up Zillow and you look at some areas in like Arkansas or Alabama. Now, there's great areas in Arkansas and Alabama, but there's also some areas where in the last year, in an entire county, there were 8 sales of places of land. Right. And if you look at how much the listings are, there's like 300 listings in that county. So 300 listing in 8 sales. I mean, it doesn't take much to understand that you don't want to buy there because you can't get rid of it. Right? Okay. The exact opposite is also true. You don't not want to be in the fastest growing areas of the United States to do deals, at least not until you really understand this and you really have implemented the follow-up processes in a proper way. You can get deals there, but it's for the beginning investor, it's much harder. And that is like a couple of markets in Florida, like Charlotte County, Florida, can think of. There's something like 7,000 pieces of land have sold in Charlotte County in the last year. And Charlotte County is like this size. It's not a big county. So there's like 7,000 pieces of land that have sold there, and there's something like 8,000 for sale. So they're selling very, very quickly, or 5,000 are for sale. So they're selling very, very quickly, which is a good thing. But in a market like that, even the last seller has identified that there's value in their property, and they are getting bombarded with requests to sell their property. So it's a higher company. It's one of the, but there's only probably like 10, 15 counties like that in the United States that are really like hyper growth. And there's probably another 50 or 100 counties in the US that are super slow. But there's 3,007 counties in the United States. So that basically leaves something like 2,800 or 2,900 counties where you can absolutely do business. The other thing is, like, if you want to be in the rural, more recreational area, pick an area that is actually attractive. So my number one example, and where actually quite a few of our students are doing really good deals, is like the Smoky Mountains. If you think about them, there's Chattanooga, there's Charleston, there's Atlanta, and there's probably another city that I currently forget up on the north side of it. So you have something like 7-8 million people from these different cities that are within a 2-hour drive of the Smoky Mountains. And what do the Smoky Mountains, what do they have to offer? Cooler temperatures in summer, forests, hiking, biking, probably river rafting, kayaking, lakes. It's just perfect outdoor recreation.
Yeah, it's an outdoor lover's dream.
Exactly right. So in that area, a 13-acre parcel is worth about, depending on location, of course, is worth about $75,000. You can take those, and there's huge demand for them because a lot of the people in again, Atlanta, Chattanooga, Charleston, and whatever else is around have RVs, they have boats, they have ATVs, they have dirt bikes, and they want to get a piece of land, and they want to not just spend a weekend there, they want to spend a month there if they can in summer. And today, with today's technology of like Starlink is a game changer for our business. Starlink, if you heard about it, Elon Musk, like satellite dish, broadband internet in places where even 5 years ago you couldn't even have cell phone reception. Yeah. So what that
internet everywhere
does? Go ahead. Sorry.
No, internet everywhere.
Yeah, internet everywhere. And as a result of that, you can be on your 13 acres in the middle of a forested area with a nice, perhaps nice opening there where you put your RV, and over there you create plans to build a cabin. You get solar panels, which are affordable now, and you get Starlink, and you drill a well. You're off the grid, and you can literally work at Apple as a programmer, or at Google, or at Facebook, or you can be a hotshot attorney working there and still live or spend extensive periods of time out in nature. That has put such a turbo on, or it's like engine fuel to the land business. And that started really in 2020 when COVID hit, and when people started realizing that their right to movement was so restricted that they're like, well, if I can't move around the city because I get arrested or something, let me get an RV. So they bought an RV, and they went off into the mountains. And in the mountains, they have space, they can walk it. And the RV industry has skyrocketed since then, and the land industry has skyrocketed since then. So that's the thing. And so in the rural areas, it's in the recreational areas, it's really what's attractive about it. So I give you the opposite example. There's an area northern Nevada called Elko County. There is hundreds of 40-acre parcels. They're worth nothing. Like you can sell them, you can pick them up for $2,000, but you sell them for $5,000 or $6,000 because what is there in Elko County? There's no trees, there's no water, there's no civilization other than the little town of Elko, which a few casinos. And I stayed there one night. Crappy little town. Excuse me. Hopefully nobody's from Elko. If you are, my apologies. But other than that, there's nothing. So it's hot. It's brutally hot. There's coyotes, there's rattlesnake, and there's roadrunners, and there's tumbleweed. There's nothing.
So that's essentially buying the desert squares.
Yeah, you're buying a desert square. So that's not attractive, but the Smoky Mountains are attractive. Northern Arizona is attractive. We got a city here. I live in Phoenix, in the Phoenix area. There's 4.5 million people in Phoenix, and currently it's 110 degrees outside. So you go outside, you go up the mountain. In 2 hours, you're at 7,000 foot elevation, pine trees, lakes, hiking, elk hunting, beautiful areas, and 78 degrees temperature in July, August, and so on. So, and skiing in winter, and so on. So land up there is extremely attractive because of the 4.5 million people, even if it's just 5% that would love to have a piece of land up there. That's 400,000, that's 200,000 people that are in the market for a piece of land up there and willing to buy it and have the money for it.
I love that. So those are great examples of no-go zones and things like that. So when you're sending these mail pieces to the 3 types of lots you mentioned, the infill lots, the path of progress lots, and the recreational lots, what is the messaging there? Is it pretty simple, like want to sell your land, or is there anything that you recommend in terms of messaging?
Well, there's 2 ways we approach these sellers. One of them is what we call with a neutral letter or neutral message, which basically simply says like, hey, I know you own land in XYZ County and in XYZ subdivision or so, and we're interested in buying it. And if you're interested in selling, if you're interested in getting rid of the burden of property ownership, then just simply call us. And we put a phone number in there, or we put also a QR code or a link over to our website. And then people come over to the website or call us and they give us information. Typically what we do is I don't take those phone calls anymore. At the very beginning I did, but we use a call center for that. So we have a call center pick up for us with our company name, and they can do the same for obviously anyone listening here that wants to do this. And they can do the same for you. So then the company picks up, takes a bunch of information from them about how's the terrain, how long have they owned it, what's the story behind the land, and sometimes the sellers are like really wanting to tell you their story about it. And that gives you a lot of ability to build rapport with them and build a personal relationship with them. And then at the end, you ask them what they want for the property. They tell you, or if you have somebody unlicensed doing it, they simply ask what they think the property is worth. And then they tell you, and you go and then we'll tell them like, okay, give us a few days to figure this out, and we'll get back with you, and you send me an offer if you're interested. And then we do that. Then we value the property, give them an offer, and send them an offer actually in writing. The second option, the second way we contact them is actually, particularly if you're a little bit more familiar with an area, you can go straight in the very first contact with the seller. You can go there and basically say like, hey, I'm interested in buying your property. And as a matter of fact, I've already done the research, and here's an offer. And you right there as a second sheet, send them an offer. It's what we call a blind offer, because you haven't talked to the person. You don't know if they're interested in selling or not. But the surprising amount of people are, because again, they owned the property for decades. They have now necessarily, most land is owned free and clear, by the way, too. That's an interesting kind of thing. It's free and clear very simply because banks don't like to lend on land. So they might have bought that property themselves with seller financing, paid it off over 10 years. Now they've owned it for 20 more years, free and clear. They don't want it. They don't need it. They're kind of like have the garage sale mentality, and letting them go. So you can, and you don't know when the timing is right, but often when you hit them up with a good offer, again, and not every offer is 10 cents on a dollar. We might $40,000 property. I might offer them $17,000 for that deal, and they're really like, they might not even be aware or care if it's worth $40,000. They might think it's worth 20, 25, and they're like, okay, you're not consulting with them. They're not your client. You are a buyer. You're making an offer, and they can consult with whoever they want. We're disclosing that I have a real estate license, but we're basically saying I'm buying on my own behalf, and that fulfills the requirements of disclosure. And you simply go make an offer. They accept the offer or not, or they call you back and like, can you give me more? And you negotiate, and then you buy it. You make no representation about the value of the property. You just simply make an offer. And then you get under contract, and then you turn around, and a deal like that, I might sell for $33,000 cash and make net $15,000 on that deal or so.
Yeah, no, I love that. So let's break down those two examples you just gave. Obviously, in the blind offer example, it's worth, let's say, retail 40,000. You offer 17,000, and that's pretty straightforward. They either accept or they don't. In the other example, where you're just sending out mail pieces and they're calling you, and let's say you think the area is worth, the lots are 40,000. And they say, they want 40,000. How are you approaching that? Is that just like move on, or are you trying to negotiate, or just find the people that are willing to take less?
So at the end of the day, it becomes a numbers game. And typically out of every 20 to 25 offers we make, we get one accepted, and the other ones we don't. Now, again, I have a real estate license, but I don't use it I have never listed a house for anyone else. I don't even list my own houses when I go sell one. I hire a realtor for it because I simply use it to have access. I mean, I got it 20 years ago, use it to have access to the MLS. And I use it also when I represent myself in larger, more commercial transactions. So we also buy apartment complexes, and I can represent myself and on either side of the transaction, and or represent myself when I bought this house, saved a ton of money on that, and so on and so forth. But if somebody is a realtor, let's say, they could also pursue the strategy of saying, like, if somebody says, I want 40 grand, and don't you offer me less than that? The first thing is I would do is I still make him a lower offer. I would offer him 20 grand and then see what he does. And if he doesn't accept, then I could always go back and say, it's like, hey, Mr. Seller, we couldn't get agree on the price, but I'm actually a realtor. Would you be open to me listing it for you? Because here's the thing, once you're trained on the land profits method, we can hopefully talk about that too, how we sell these properties. Because when we sell these properties, we sell them probably 5 times faster than any realtor out there. Like, I want to dare to say that a well-priced and well-marketed property using our strategy should sell anywhere between 2 weeks and 6 weeks after listing. And that is not normal in the land space. In the land space, usually properties sit there for 6 months, for 9 months, until they finally find the right buyer and sell it. But there's many things you can do to massively accelerate that sale. And so if we know that, couldn't we use that to also list some of the people's properties that are not willing to give it to us for pennies on the dollar? We certainly can, and then negotiate a really good commission in the land space. The commission is often around 10%, which you split if you have somebody brings in a buyer's broker. But if not, you get the full 10%. So if I can get a listing for 40 and I can sell it for 40, I would make $4,000, and that's not bad either. But back to your thing, the main thing is that it's a numbers game. So if they want 40 grand, I usually just ignore it, and I'm still making the $17,000 offer. And then you'll be surprised how many times they come back and say, you know what, I'll accept 25. And you're like, well, let's negotiate. And then you settle at 20 and you sell it at 30. And after closing costs, you still made $9,000, which is nothing to write home about, but it's still good. It's still a nice deal.
Yeah.
I mean, think about it. 20 deals like that is $180,000 a year. That's more than most. That's more than most people make in their jobs.
No, that's really great. And you just kind of had something click too, is, for those of us that are realtors, not only could you potentially get a listing, but even if it's out of your area, you could even collect a referral fee. So there's lots of different ways to monetize those leads, which I think is really cool.
Right. And again, a lot of people do that, particularly the referral. You go into, I don't know, Alabama and get some deals done, and you have a bunch of people that don't accept your offer. You just find a really good land realtor there. It's like, hey, all these people want to sell their property. Go contact them and send me a referral fee, and you can create massive cash flow for that, and a nice cash for that, and that's really that can cover your entire marketing costs for that matter.
Yep. Yeah, it covers all the mailings, exactly.
Yeah.
So, okay, so let's say, we've gotten someone now we've sent them a mail piece, we've had the conversation, they're willing to accept, let's say, 17,000 for the $40,000 property. What are we doing in terms of due diligence, or like what's next for us in the process? Pardon the quick interruption, but if you're looking for a little extra help growing your real estate business, make sure you hit the link in the description below to book a one-on-one consulting session where I will personally help you take your real estate business to the next level. Over the last 15 years, I've grown a brokerage to over 1,000 agents in multiple states, consistently doing over $4 billion a year in sales, and we've been on the Inc. 500 5 times. I would love to personally help you reach your business goals and have the best year you've ever had. Book your session today. And now back to the podcast.
Right. So if the property is worth 40 grand, first of all, we verify that it is worth 40 grand. Simply now you run comms, and even if you don't have access to any kind of like MLS or something in the States nowadays, that doesn't matter. And like Zillow, Trulia, Redfin, they all show you what property sold in that market in the last 3, 6, 9, 12 months. And the nice part about land is you can go back in time a little bit more, because land prices usually don't fluctuate as much as house prices. So you can easily go look at a year's back and say like, okay, what sold in the last year? Bunch of properties sold for 40 to 45. Well, great. The property's worth 40. Done. And then what you do is, once you have it on a contract, you do indeed a deep dive. So before you make the offer, you don't have to do a due diligence deep dive before you make the offer. Very simply because the offer that we use is not the standard real estate contract that is approved by the real estate, commission or like the board of realtors. We use a very, very simple attorney generated, but very, very simple one-page sale agreement. And the reason for that is very simply that we are not like, if I'm putting my realtor hat on, if I were to sit there with a seller, again, I've never listed a house, but I would, but when I have sold, let's say when I sell a house and I look at that 9-page legal size, fine print, real estate agreement, I don't even understand half of what's on it. So the benefit is that the realtor can then sit with me and explain to me all the details what it is. Now I do understand it because I have a license on, but and I've been in the industry for 22 years. But a normal person doesn't understand half of what's on that agreement. So therefore, you almost need somebody sitting next to you. But here's the thing: when we make these offers, we make them in writing. So we send it by mail. We send an offer by mail to the seller. Seller gets home from work, opens the mail. There's a contract in there. I'm not sitting next to him to explain what's in that contract. So as a result, we removed everything from the contract that could be possibly confusing. We wrote it in a non-legalese language, yet it's still attorney generated, and it covers all the bases, and it's a 1-page agreement. And that agreement lets you, most importantly, has one provision in there that supersedes all other provisions in importance. And that is, it literally has under item 4, it says buyer, in that case, meaning you, because you're doing this business, you're now buying from the seller. The buyer has the right to cancel the agreement anytime for any reason.
Oh,
that's a killer provision in there that protects you. And again, the next question is that people ask in this moment is like, well, why would a seller sign that? Well, exactly because what I said earlier, they just don't care. They just want to get rid of these properties. There's 46 million pieces of land in private ownership in the United States, and a couple million of them people just don't want anymore, and they're like sick and tired of paying property taxes, etc. They'll sign anything just to be happy to get rid of that property. So they sign it, and because of that number one provision, we don't have to do as much research up front. Because if we now we find out what it's worth, and we perhaps look at the website to see if there's like anything we need to pay attention to, but then that we just make the offer. Once the offer comes accepted, then we dive into the deep end. Then we call the planning and zoning division and ask them, is this property buildable? If yes, what's the building envelope? Is there a restriction on size of a property that can build there? Is there a restriction on number of units that can build there? Usually it's one house, but sometimes they give you more. Like, is there what kind of is there any protected animal species that breeds in the area that would restrict you from being able to do that? On the West Coast, there's some desert tortoises that are protected, that if they're on your property, you won't get a building permit. And the east side in Florida, there's like the scrub jay. It's some kind of a bird that if the bird nests in your property, you won't get a building permit. Or if the bird is known to nest in that area, you don't get a building permit. We're figuring those things out. How far are utilities away? Is there environmental issues we need to worry about? Right? We can go on the APA, Environmental Protection Agency website, and look it up to see if there's any kind of brownfields, basically contaminated areas in the area. If there's any incidents happened in that area that could potentially have contaminated that kind of land. The good news is that if you're in an infill lot, it's a residential area, it's usually not an issue. If you're on the outskirts of town, a few miles outside of town, it's not an issue. And if you're looking at a 20-acre mini ranch 2 hours away from town, it's not an issue either. But you still want to look, right? You still want to look. You want to make sure that you go down the full checklist and make sure you check all these things. And once you checked all of those things, you're ready to put that property up on the market and sell it before even buying it. I know there's a couple of states that have made wholesaling, they have tried to make wholesaling illegal. But here's the thing, you want to talk to an attorney about that and so on. But if you're worried about that state, just go to another state. There's 49 other states. Or there's 3 or 4 states. There's 46 other states that you can do this in. Or the other option to do this is when you actually, what we do, the definition of wholesaling is an assignment. Like the definition of wholesaling is that if I have this contract, let's see this contract here between the seller and me, then and I market this property and I don't own this property, I need to disclose that this property is for sale, that I don't own the property. That's not a big deal. And I need to disclose that I have a contract on it. And then what the definition of assignment is that I then assign this contract over to the buyer, and that buyer takes over my spot in the transaction and never bought the program. And I've never bought the property. I can totally understand how the realtor community is upset at that, because basically it's like finding somebody, telling the property, marketing, and then not even buying it yourself. It sounds almost like you're being a realtor, even though you're not, because you're acting as an investor. But I can totally understand why the realtor community is upset about that. But you know what? You can still do the exact same thing if you do buy the property and perhaps use transactional funding. So the way to go around the assignment and the wholesaling kind of rules is by simply buying the property and then selling it. But you can actually do both of those on the same day. And you can use, for example, we use very frequently, you use what's called transactional funding. So we basically, if we have a $100,000 property that we put under contract for 40 grand and we sell it for 70, then we're going to go borrow $40,000 for one day. We're going to go market the property while we have it under contract, and we disclose all the property disclosures that we don't own it, that we have it under contract. But again, the buyers don't care. I mean, as a matter of fact, they appreciate it because you're being transparent. And then you say, like, great, but here's the thing. I'm going to buy this property. I'm going to buy it the same day, and then we're going to sell it to you. We're going to use title insurance for that. We're going to use all the proper things you get. There's marketable title. It's a clear chain of title. Everything is good. I'm going to pay 40 grand for it and pay and buy it, and then I'm going to sell it to you for 70. Now, you don't disclose the numbers, but we basically like, I'm buying it, and that's what you do. So you borrow $40,000 for one day. Whoever that lender is, it's called a transactional funder. It's going to charge you perhaps $2,000 for that. Then you pay perhaps another $2,000 in closing costs. So your total cost of the transaction is 40 plus 2 plus 2 is 44. And then you sell it for 70. And then the buyer brings in the 70. He buys the property. The lender gets paid back. Title company gets paid. And you get a check for $26,000 in the deal. And you have done this 100% legally. Even to my knowledge, I'm not an attorney, so get your own opinion about it. But even in most of the states that have limited the ability to wholesale.
Love that. So yeah, so just to walk through that one more time. So you've marketed it, you've done your due diligence, you've put it either under contract yourself or wholesaled it, or done kind of a wet, A to B to C type scenario. And then are those kind of the main exit strategies that you use in your business?
Yes, they are. And again, sometimes when you do seller financing, you can also sell the note immediately. So that's something that's now it gets a little bit more into creative finance. But there's a concept we call triple close, which is a really cool concept that we have now perfected, and we teach that to our students. And that's just like, say you have a deal, it's $100,000 property, and you get under contract for 40 plus $2,000 in closing costs, so $42,000. But you sell it with seller financing, which, by the way, as long as the buyer is committed to not building on the property, this is not subject to Dodd-Frank. This is not subject to any of those kind of things. So we're really outside of a lot of legislation too. And so what happens is you sell it for $100,000, but somebody only gives you a $20,000 down payment. Well, the problem is you have to pay the seller 42, but you're only getting 20 down, so you're short $22,000. Okay. Well, if you have the money, you can bring it from your own money, and then it's fine. But the better way is, or an alternative way is, to simply say yes to that offer. It's like, yes, I'll accept the offer. So what happens then is you have it under contract for 40 plus closing costs. Basically, your cost of acquisition is $42,000. When you sell it, you're selling it for 100 with a $20,000 down payment. So basically, they would pay 20 down, and you now have a note for $80,000. You created the note, right? They owe you the $80,000. They agree in writing that they're going to pay you $960 a month for the next 15 years, and et cetera, at a good 12-13% interest rate, which is normal in land. And then, but that note, you can hold that note or you can sell that note. Now, in order to get that note, you have to come up with, in order to make this deal even possible, you have to come up with an extra $22,000, right? Because
to cover the gap.
Yeah, that's the gap. So what you can do is you can take that note and you can sell that note the day that you create the note. So in that case, what really happens is not a double closing, it's a triple closing. What happens in that case, you buy the property for $40,000, you sell it for $100,000 with $20,000 down, so you create an $80,000 note, and then you bring a note buyer to the same closing table, and sell that note the day it was created, perhaps you sell it at a discount for like $70,000, a $10,000 discount. So what happens from a money flow in this case is that the buyer sends in $20,000. The note buyer sends in $70,000 because they're buying your $80,000 note for $70,000. So now you have $90,000 in escrow. And with that, the title company has enough money to pay everyone. Because in that case, what happens is title company sends $40,000 to the seller, keeps $4,000 for their own effort, and sends $46,000 to you and gives the note to the note buyer, who then starts collecting payments from the property buyer. So in this case, you solve the problem of not having enough cash by bringing in a buyer for the note that buys the note, and everyone is happy. The note buyer is happy because they get a nice yield on their return on their money, so probably 15% or so. The buyer is happy because they get the property of your dream. The seller is happy because they get $40K for their property. They got cashed out, and you're happy because you made $46,000 as a cash deposit into your bank account as a pure profit in this scenario without even using any of your own money.
Amazing.
Yeah.
So if you're not sold on land investing after all that, I don't know what to tell you, but lots of really interesting ways to make money. Even different cash flow strategies, and maybe we can just kind of touch on that before we wrap up, is just how you sell these as a seller finance deal, and can collect checks like your daughter did.
Yeah. Well, the selling and seller finance is very simply, you just put the terms, you make the offer. I think the number one mistake most realtors out there do is they, particularly on land, is they just simply ask for cash only. If they were to be open and if they would exactly know how these things work, they could educate their seller, because the sellers often are open to cash flow too. The sellers don't mind. What the sellers don't want is a rental property. They don't want a tenants, toilets, and termites, and midnight move-outs, and the toilet is clogged and things like that, which on land doesn't happen anyway. The cash flow on land is pure cash flow, because you become the bank and you're just collecting. And the worst case that can happen is that the buyer stops buying, in which case you foreclose on it, then you get the property back. And guess what? Now you get to sell it again, get another big down payment. So actually, financially speaking, seller financing is the most profitable thing you can do. Seller financing is a very great cash flow. It's pure cash flow without tenants. So if we would educate our sellers a little bit more about that, I think many people could sell properties much, much faster. But I want to quickly cover, if that's okay, is like, you just put it on the listing, but how the listing looks like is way more important than anything else. Because the listing is the thing, that's what really sets us apart from anyone else. Because what most people do is, realtors very unfortunately are not trained on how to sell land. They're trained to sell houses. And I don't blame them. I went to school. I learned nothing about land in realtor school, right? And when I do my renewal classes every 2 years, there's still nothing about land that I learn, not much at least. So you're trained about how to sell houses. You're trained how to get the photographer in. How to get the beautiful sunset pictures. How to declutter the house. If the house is empty, how to stage the house. You learn how to do a broker open house. You learn how to put it on the different platforms. You learn how to get open houses and get things moving, and how to get the community involved. And eventually that thing sells. And with a house, you're actually describing the facts. You say, this is a 3-bedroom, 2-bath home in XYZ subdivision, in XYZ school district, and the HOA fees are X, right? So people that are looking for that neighborhood are going to be going there, going to look at that. They like the split floor plan and so on and so forth. So you're selling the facts. In land, you're not selling the facts, at least not emphasizing the facts. Of course, you're selling the facts, but you're emphasizing. What you're doing is you're selling a dream. You're selling a story. Like, for example, if somebody wants a 2-acre piece of land half an hour outside of town, do they want a piece of dirt with 8 trees, 7 trees, 5 trees, or 12 trees? No. They don't care about the number of trees on there. What they want is the ability to have space to put a garden in, to have a horse, to have a cow, to have a goat. Like the ability to to be in the next little town 10 minutes later and have a Starbucks coffee and have groceries and go to church and have a bank and a doctor close by. They want to know how far is it to actually, if they have to go back into town, how far is it back into town? They want to know how far is it to the next lake. So a description of that lot is not, this is a 2-acre parcel with 17 trees. The description of that lot is like, hey, listen, this property is perfect if you want to retire outside of town, but still be close to town. Within 5 minutes, you're at the interstate, and in 35 minutes, you're back in town. Within 10 minutes, you're in this little town, and there's a grocery store, there's this, there's that, there's that. Lake XYZ is only 20 minutes away if you like the outdoors. There's skiing is close by, and by the way, if you want to go to et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, those kind of things. And now you're attracted. Like if you're a middle-aged person with middle-aged person perhaps, or just you work from home. Let's say you have no kids and you want to live on your own 2-acre parcel. And you want to be outside of town, but be able to get into town when you need to. Would that sound attractive to you? Because yes, it checks all the boxes. Because nobody cares if there's 17 trees. What they care about is, am I going to be on alone? What happens if I want to go to church? How far do I have to drive? What happens if I want to go to grocery stores? Where can I go eat if I don't want to cook? What can I do outdoors? Those kind of things. So when you go and show your pictures like that, the pictures of the land are the most unimportant pictures of the entire listing. I've sold hundreds of pieces of land without a single picture of the piece of land. But you know what I put up in the pictures? Pictures of the closest church, pictures of the closest lake, pictures of the closest grocery store, pictures of that shows it in context to how far am I from the next civilization here. And those kind of things make these properties sell. And when you do that, you tell a story, and then you combine it with seller financing and or low price. Now your property sells 10 times faster than everything else around you.
And you're putting that in the listing as well, like open to seller financing?
Yeah, absolutely. It's right there. Open seller financing. We might say this $70,000 property is available at $65,000 with seller financing of only 20% down. Or if you want to pay cash, we give you another 20% discount on cash. And then people are like, dude, if I have the cash, I'll take for the cash. If I don't have the cash, I'll take the seller financing because it's still a great option that gets me into my dream property just a bit below market value.
I love that. Well, we've covered a lot, and you've definitely pulled back the curtain on lots of different ways to make money in land. I know that people can also learn more from you at Land Profit Fund. Can you give us any more on that in terms of how to connect with you, how to learn more, how to go deeper?
Yeah, Land Profit Fund, F-U-N, like having fun. So there's no other letter in there. It's Land Profit Fund, like having fun. If you go there, you can download a free 30-day blueprint that shows you basically, it's a very detailed document, gives you a lot of details on how to actually set this up, how to get this, how the exact process flow works. And then also you can find me on Facebook. We have a Facebook group called Land Profits with Jack and Michelle Bosch, or Land Profit Generator. You just look at for Jack Bosch. Also on Instagram and different platforms. We have that. You can also go, sometimes we do like a few days educational kind of sessions. You can go to landprofitmaster.com and opt in there. But Land Profit Fund is probably the best place to go and get something tangible in your hands that you can follow along over 30 days and literally start your land business that way.
Yeah, and that's a full 30-day plan for people to follow, right?
Yes, correct.
Awesome. Yeah, that's killer. Definitely go check that out. One final question I like to ask is, in 60 seconds or less, what does it take to be a successful land investor?
Same success principle for anything in life. Commit to something and stay the path. Not every day that you wake up is a day that you want to do something. Michael Phelps was at the Olympics right now, was asked, he's like, there's many, many days I didn't want to wake up. I didn't want to go into the pool. And yet he still did. So be consistent. Consistency 2 times a week, 3 hours on his land business is better than 40 hours in 1 week and then nothing for 3 months. So just simply, what helped us to be successful is very simply, we found something that we could understand. We found something that we could embrace. We found something that's simple enough for us to do, even though I was 100% traveling and I could do it part-time and from a distance. And with that, we just stuck to it. and little by little did things every other day for an hour or two, just like put a little time in there, but consistently, and boom, first deal $4,000, second deal $10,000. Within 6 months, we were able to quit our jobs. We were financially free. Within 18 months, we were millionaires.
I love that. That's great advice. And it truly is a simple business. It's not easy, but it is simple. And there's definitely a lot of opportunity to make money. Make sure you guys go and connect with Jack. Check out Land Profit Fun. Make sure you also hit the like and subscribe button. Hit the links down below. And we will see you on the next one. Thanks, Jack.
Thank you.